Good morning. This is Blaine Greenfield here with BLAINESWORLD show heard on WPPM 103.7 out of Asheville. It's also on Facebook Live, and we're really glad you're here with us today, the very first time with a virtual show. And it's my pleasure to also introduce my first guest, and he is Brian Biro, and we'll meet him in just a second, but you can say hello, Brian, to all your fans.
Hey, it's so great to be with you virtually.
Okay, and we're also not only on the radio, we're also on Facebook Live, and it does look like we are recording now, so that's a good sign.
Woo!
Technical difficulties before. And I should mention that this is the first time we've done a virtual show, and we're on every Wednesday morning on the radio with the WPVM 103.7. We're also on Facebook Live, and if all goes well, which I think it will, you'll be seeing us each week. I want to thank especially Brian for being my guest this show, because Brian was my first guest on BLAINESWORLD show some 3 years ago when we did a Sandwiches radio interview. Is that correct, I think?
That's right. I guess I'm your favorite guinea pig. Yay!
Okay, is that and your first virtual guest. And I've known Brian for a bunch of years, and he's not only a good friend, he's also an inspiration to me. He's also an author, a raconteur. He's a member of a breakfast club. You name it, Brian is Brian's a big part of my life. And I should mention that Brian Biro is known as America's breakthrough coach. A major client described him best when he said Brian Biro has the energy of a 10-year-old, the enthusiasm of a 20-year-old, and the wisdom of a 75-year-old. And that's changing a little. We're getting close to that 75-year-old.
Getting too close to that upper limit there, yeah.
Okay, we'll have to change it in a couple of years. Brian has delivered over 1,800 presentations around the world over the last 30 years. The author of 15 books, including his bestseller, Beyond Success, and his brand new, The ROI of Kindness. Brian was rated #1 from over 40 speakers at 4 consecutive Inc. magazine international conferences. With degrees from Stanford University and UCLA, Brian has appeared on Good Morning America and CNN. And Brian, I'm missing something. I don't see in your
And BLAINESWORLD.
BLAINESWORLD, we have to add that. Brian was recently named one of the top 100 most inspirational graduates in the 75-year history of UCLA Graduate School of Business. He was also honored as one of the top interactive keynote speakers in North America, one of the top 60 motivational speakers in the world. Brian, glad you could be with us.
Blaine, it's always a pleasure to be with you. You're one of the great people in my life, one of my heroes.
Well, likewise. And Brian, I'm really glad we have you today, because we're going through certain uncertain times because of this coronavirus pandemic. And what's the best way people can deal with these unprecedented times?
You know, Blaine, everyone right now is filled with uncertainty, and a lot of people's worlds have changed. And there's no getting away from the fact that we don't know what's coming. We don't know how long we're going to be in social distancing. We don't know if it's going to be, what kind of changes will be permanent. And so a lot of people are filled with fear. But here's the truth. We always have a choice. And the foundational choice we have every day, no matter what's coming, whether it's personal or it's universal like we're dealing with right now, is a choice between fear and faith. And I have a couple of beliefs that really have helped me through the darkest times in my life. And I have some tough ones. I had my own daughter went through a major tragedy in her life, and one that for a while really darkened our whole world. And so I learned a lot from that really fits where we are today. And the first belief is one that says that within every adversity is planted the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. In other words, the toughest challenges we ever face are the very things from which we grow the most. And so when you come from that place, and for almost everyone I've ever known, when they think about it, that's true. You know, when I think about the tough things that we went through with my daughter, I learned things I will never would have learned. I would have chosen that way to learn them, but now I know, and it's helping me through right now. So step one is to recognize that within this challenge are hidden opportunities. Perfect example. March 13th was the last time I was on the road. I was having a record year, and now I'm having a record year, but it's a different kind of record. Every live event, which is my livelihood, my entire livelihood, was gone. And I don't know when they'll start up again. what that did was help me recognize, okay, what's the hidden benefit? And the hidden benefit is it's helped me to start to develop my virtual business, something that I never really poured myself into. And as soon as I started working on it, I started to have some momentum in my life, some excitement in my life. I was learning new things. I was discovering things that were right in front of me, but because I never saw that opportunity, I never took advantage of. For example, now I can reach smaller businesses because I won't be on the road 30 days a month to do it. Things I never dreamed of come from that first belief. The second belief, I'm an avid biography reader, as you know. And when I read Chuck Yeager, the test pilot who broke the speed of sound, his biography had a great thought to help people right now. And that is, they asked him, Chuck, what's your favorite thing in the world to do? And he said, it's fishing for the golden trout. Now, the golden trout are only at the highest mountain lakes, above 9,000 feet, like up in Desolation Valley above Lake Tahoe. And they said, well, Chuck, what happens when you're kind of old? You can't get up to 9,000 feet anymore. He says, well, I'll hike up to 7,000 and I'll fish for the rainbows. I'll do the next best thing. And see, that's what we've got to understand. One of my favorite speakers is a guy by the name of W. Mitchell. W. Mitchell, talk about having, we're going through a tough time with this pandemic, but compared to what W. Mitchell went through in his life, it's nothing. He was burned over 75% of his body. He's he's hard to look at a little bit because of all the skin grafts. They didn't think he'd make it for a year as he fought for life after that incredible amount of pain and the burning. He came out of it and he said, my life's not over. And what did he decide to do? He decided to live one of his life dreams. He became a pilot. He got his pilot's license. And he was out flying and the wings were not de-iced enough. He crashed. He became paraplegic. So now he can't walk anymore. He's paraplegic. His spine is permanently damaged. He's burned over 75% of his body. Today, he is one of the most sought after and top professional speakers in the world. And they asked him, he said, how do you do that? And here's a great answer we can all grab a hold of. He says, before my accidents, I could do 10,000 things. He says, now I can do 8,000. I have a choice. I either focus on the 2,000 I lost or the 8,000 I still have. And incidentally, Blaine, you'll appreciate this one. He married his nurse, who he fell in love with when he was going through all this rehab. So right now we got to do the next best thing. We got to realize there's opportunities even in the greatest darkness, and that we have a focus on faith rather than fear.
Your story, Brian, reminds me of my dad, who had the same kind of attitude. After he had his amputation, people would ask him, how do you feel? And he would say, 97% great, 3% not so great. Like Mitchell's story, but isn't it true?
It really is.
You mentioned the example, and not certainly along the lines of one you just told the story, but I think of our breakfast group. And Brian and I get together with two of our friends, Marvin Stofsky and Tom Gallagher, every Monday morning. And it was something we all look forward to, but we couldn't meet. So we had a virtual meeting the other day, and it was fun. It wasn't the same, but it was fun.
It was great, except for when we tried to put the Cholula through our screens and cracked my screen there. It was great. You got to do the next best thing. And the next best thing, you'll discover things, and as you do it, that you never knew until you jumped into it. So that's something that can carry us every day. And, I want to really stress this one point, Blaine, and that was, I talked about my daughter going through this very dark time, and our whole family. We were an extremely happy family, and my daughter's a shining light. For a while, it was total darkness. She had lost a man that she was intending to marry, and she just couldn't see the light. But one day, even in the midst of her pain, she said to me Daddy, I can't handle you worrying about me all the time. And I wasn't worrying about her all the time, but I was worrying about her way more than I ever had in my life. And she made me see that I was choosing fear instead of faith. And the faith was, I believe in you. I know you'll find your way. I don't know how. I know I can't fix it, but I know that you're going to get to the other side of this. And that's what's going to happen. We're going to get to the other side of this. And today she's shining brighter than ever. So there is an upside. And I don't know whether it's Pollyanna or not, but I do know this. When I focus on doing the next best thing, when I focus on the opportunity, then I start to create a different kind of energy. And that energy lifts not only myself, but the people around me. And that's true for every human being. That's our choice.
You know, it's funny, Brian, because it's a perfect segue, if you will, into your book, which I just finished. I'll just show, we now figured out how we can show this on the screen. And this is Brian's book, I forget it, The ROI of Kindness. And why I like this book so much, Brian, is it's kind of a little bit different than some of your other stuff. You know, you're a lot of motivational stuff, and this is motivational too. But when you told me about this idea, I said, wow, what a great idea, you know, to just talk about kindness. And how'd you come up with the idea just to write a book on kindness?
Well, you'll see the book is co-authored by a fellow by the name of Mac Anderson. Mac Anderson, many people on your show probably are familiar with them without knowing it. He started a company called Successories and another company called Simple Truths. So he had written several books kind of like the style of this book. And just in the course of being a professional speaker, I ran into Mac and we started talking about kindness. And I realized that I have never in my lifetime, and I'll say the same for you, who felt there is more of a need for kindness, for character, for humility, for the things that we control that seem to be getting out of control. I've never felt more need of people, so much calling names and just not showing that power of kindness. So as soon as we started talking, he started a group called Inspire Kindness. I thought, oh, I'm in. This is it. This is something I have a passion for right now. And the fun of it is, though it's essentially seemingly a book about your business, it's a book about life. But it points out that not only we all want kindness, everybody wants kindness. If I, you know, when I'm on, I hope that one of the 3 words people will remember me for is kindness. But here's the deal. A lot of people.
Let me stop you a second. What are the other 2? Can you share them?
Father and grandfather.
A kind father and grandfather.
Anyways, most people think that, you know, everyone wants kindness in their life, but a lot of people think in the business world, kindness is weak. Kindness doesn't work. Kindness, you know, business is dog eat dog. And one of the fun things in this book is it points out that is exactly opposite, that truly kindness works. It works to performance, it works to results, and at the same time, it of course makes everyone around you feel better. A quick example, the field that has the highest turnover rate, the industry, is, no surprise, quick service foods, so fast foods. 2 companies in that industry really focus on kindness every day. It's a part of their culture. It's their underlying DNA. They work on it. They focus on it. They concentrate on it. And that is Starbucks and Chick-fil-A. The average turnover rate in the quick service food industry, I know you know because you read the book, but it's 170%. That means they turn over 2 times a year almost. Chick-fil-A and Starbucks, 14 and 24%. What's the difference? Kindness. And kindness is such a powerful way that we can deal with what's happening right now.
Now, let me ask you, I'm sorry, in those 2 examples you mentioned, so do they actually teach kindness or coach kindness, or how do they get it into their culture?
Absolutely, they do. They create what they call a kindness value proposition. It's built into every day. Stories they tell in their morning meetings are about somebody going the extra mile to be kindness. They build it into their orientation program. They award and recognize and reward acts of kindness. It becomes the DNA of their culture through the power of the stories that they tell. And you don't have that many people talking about the products, really. You know, there's, yeah, I like the sandwich and I like the, you know, what they do talk about is somebody coming out and bringing an umbrella to walk you in, or somebody who took, you know, somebody drove through the drive-through and forgot to take their change. And instead of putting it in your pocket or back in the till, put it in an envelope, put their name on it. A week later, they come in, you hand them $3.48. And they're like, how many people did they tell that story to? Thousands of them. That's how you build it in.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I remember the exact same story at Bed Bath & Beyond. One day, it's starting to pour, and the guy comes out with an umbrella, and he says, doesn't he want to borrow? He says, do you want me to walk you to your car? And I was pretty impressed. You know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And plus, you know, we can't mess up that hairdo right there. So we gotta.
Or the beard.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
A little bit.
Kindness. Part of the fun of this book is to point out that kindness actually works. That this old idea that kindness is soft. Another great example. You know, I fly, or up until a month ago, I flew all the time. Uh, One airline, when they started out, people laughed at them, said they never make it. That was in the days that NM was gigantic and TWA was gigantic, which incidentally they're gone. This airline today is the busiest domestic American airline. And people, who is it? It's Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines is the ultimate company to combine the power of fun and kindness. That's what they're built upon. And give you 3 flight numbers for them. 0, all right, 3, and 46. The 0 is they've had 0 layoffs or wage decreases in their 46-year history. Think about it. The average turnover rate in the industry of the airline industry is 25 to 30%. The 3 number, their flight number is 3% is their turnover rate. And lastly, they've had 46 years. Think about those 46 years when the price of oil was going up and down, when we were in recession. 46 years they've been profitable. No other airline close to that. Plus, their customers are incredibly loyal. Why? Because kindness works, especially when you bring it together in a fun way, which should be right up your alley because you're one of the most fun guys I know.
Well, talk about, Brian, saying Southwest. And I have to say, I've never actually flown Southwest. I've never had the privilege. I assume you have.
Oh, yes.
And talk a little bit about, do they do this all the time where they do the announcements, the safety announcement? Is that something all the time or just certain people do it?
Certain people do it, but there's so much, they have a free reign to bring joy into the life of their passengers. So, example, I was not flying Southwest recently, but my gate was right next to the Southwest. The guy brings out a Frisbee, and the next thing I know, this is right out the gate, he's got all these kids, and they're playing a kind of a hot potato Frisbee game, and people are laughing, and this was because there was a delay. Now, think about it. If you've flown and you've been in a delay, people are getting on edge, they're getting uptight. Just a little fun and kindness turn that crisis into opportunity, just like we want to do right now in our lives. To recognize, you know, if we're quarantining at home, we get to spend time with the people we love in a way that we haven't before. We get to do things. So that's the power of again, what we talked about before. There's always opportunity in adversity. And 2, when you bring the elements of kindness and fun, all right, suddenly what seems to go down begins to rise up.
And think about the example you just gave. It's a great example that not too often have I flown where you remember the experience, you know, where you tell other people about it, you know, or you complain about it, you know, oh, this was the worst, and cancellations and whatnot. Whereas people can actually, they were delayed, they talk about it in a positive way. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
It really is. And I have been on some of those flights where they turn the when they turn the safety conversation, they do what they're supposed to, but they turn it into something fun, like, with the top of the flight, the top of the plane falls off, and they say, breathe normally, and the guy says, are you kidding me? If the top of the plane blows off, I don't think I'll still be breathing normally. Pretty soon the whole plane is laughing, and you know what happens then, plane? People start talking to each other on the airplane. Instead of just going into our cellular devices and, watching a movie, when they start that hour of kindness and fun, suddenly it becomes like it used to be, where people are actually talking to each other and enjoying each other and making friends on airplanes.
Well, Brian, talk about something else about kindness. And even as you're talking about it, I'm getting like goosebumps in a positive kind of way, that when you exhibit kindness, aside from when people exhibit kindness to you, when you exhibit it, it also makes you feel good too, doesn't it?
It really does. That's the greatest thing about kindness, is that it's something you give away. And as soon as you give it away, it doesn't matter what comes back to you. That's the point. The act of kindness fills you with, what happens in terms of your neurochemistry, it fires oxytocin. Oxytocin is called the compassion, the emotion, the heart hormone. And by the act of kindness, you accelerate the release of oxytocin, and that makes you feel good. It makes you feel connected. And right now, that's what we need. We need to connect. That's why I love that you're doing this virtual show, because you're saying, oh, darn, we can't do it the way we used to. I guess we're disconnected. No, we'll find a new way to connect, and maybe it'll be even better.
You know, so funny you said that, because I felt sort of not quite the same way when you had, you know, the cancellations on that one day. I was really kind of down. You know, I said, wow, I really enjoyed doing the show. I missed it. I put in my blog. I put elsewhere. I'm on hiatus. And all of a sudden it came to me the realization that, hey, I don't have to be. You know, I can try something new and different. And it's also like kind of fun to do it, because as you said, I'm learning, I'm trying different things, and it's helping me grow in a way. You know, so that's
Absolutely is. Absolutely. Let me give you an example of how simple this can be. Is that when my daughters were growing up, I have two beautiful daughters. They're you know, they're all grown up. But when they were growing up, 4 or 5 times a year, I would try to be CKO in my life, and that's the Chief Kindness Officer. And I would write them letters. I would actually type them on my computer, because that's how I write. I'd sign them. I'd put them in an envelope. I put a stamp on them. I'd mail them, even though I may well be home when they get them. And the reason I did it was to try to express kindness and gratitude. And instead of doing what we normally do in life, you know, talking about, why don't you clean that room? We need fungicide. You know, why don't you get ready earlier and be so crabby? These letters were a chance to try to be kind, and to write down and acknowledge when I saw them being kind or thoughtful. To write down when they tried out for something they really didn't know they could get. They had the courage to go for life. And the reason I wrote them was what you just said. It felt good. It didn't matter what came back. In fact, I was pretty sure my daughters thought, you know, my dad's weird. He writes me letters and sends them to me in the mail. And then the day that we're packing up Jenna to go away to University of Georgia, so, you know, our youngest daughter leaving to go to college, we're cleaning up a room. It's mass hysteria anyways, but we're packing up. It's way mass hysteria. I open up her desk drawer. There's all my letters. The only thing in her life that is organized are those letters. And I knew she couldn't look at her desk without remembering all those things that I'd said about her, about the time she'd been kind. And, you know, Blaine, I think that in some small way, those letters, those little acts of kindness, those little unexpected acts of kindness, helped her to get through the tragedy that she went through in her life, because it built up a kind of a reserve, a possibility of hope, of love, of joy that served her at some of the darkest moments. So acts of kindness have their, you know, they have wings, because they create stories, like you said. And they lift us when we need to be lifted.
Let's talk a little bit about this concept, though, and I know you're a big writer of notes and letters, and I am too. And how important is that in the process? In other words, and a lot of people, amazing, Brian, think about it, you know, that somebody does something for you, isn't it a nice thing to thank them or to send them a note?
It truly is. It truly is. And it's a magical opportunity now. You know, I learned this from my high school principal. His name was John Sanders. And, you know, I went to a giant public high school in Southern California. We had over 1,100 kids in my senior class. But John Sanders, I don't know what else he did, but he wrote handwritten cards. Anytime somebody did something nice, he would send them this handwritten note on his little stationery. I still have 7 of them in an album that I saved, and that was a long time ago, and I'll never forget them. And so, and in this day and age, it's even more of a woo. All right, now woo is a window of opportunity, because today people don't write cards, don't do that. And the second you write a handwritten card, or type it out and sign it, or just send something, people go, wow, they took some time. It's personal. It creates a differentiation. It creates a wow factor. And as you're writing it, you're fully present with that person. You're really bringing them both back to that moment of that you're appreciating them for that moment of kindness. So it is really a powerful way, more so today than ever, because people don't do that very much anymore.
Did you ever get to tell Sanders, you know, that you saved the letters and you kept them? Did you ever?
I did. He was one of the 2 high school teachers, counselors that really made the biggest difference. My other was a high school counselor. His name was Mr. Anderson. And Mr. Anderson pulled me into his office in 9th grade, and he stood over me, and he was really a joyful kind of guy. He was teacher was cool. He just got along with kids, but he respected them. he said, Brian, a student like you only comes along once every 10 or 15 years. Now, I got to tell you, when he said it, it's real likely he meant it bad more than he meant it good. Because I was a class clown. I just wanted people to like me. So I wasn't trying my best. I just wanted to be, the cool guy who had the funny lines. But the next thing he said was, Brian, there's something special in you. Stop wasting it. He said, every day's a gift, but only you decide if you'll open it. He said, son, you haven't opened one of them. Put your heart into each day full out. Empty your tank every day. And then you're going to feel different every night. And between those 7, John wrote to me, at moment, of kindness and believing in someone more than they were believing in themselves, I would not be on the show with you right now without those 2 things, because my life would have gone a different trajectory. That's the power of a kindness act, or an act of being a positive influence in someone's life.
And Brian, I'll use that to have you make a recommendation. And the recommendation I'd like to make, coming from you as opposed to me, is to encourage people to write people who made a difference in their lives. In other words, and as a teacher, very few students would do it, but boy, did it make a difference. So if you could,
absolutely, that's
the
most
to a coach, to their coaches or teachers or people who made a difference in their life 5 years later, 10 years later, but can people still do it?
Absolutely. In fact, the most important words I've ever written, so important to me that it's actually 5 of my books, this one sentence says this. It says, the love we fail to share is the only pain we live with. The love we fail to share is the only pain we live with. And if we don't seize that window of opportunity, then what could happen, and often happens, sadly, is the love you fail to share becomes the only pain you leave with. And that's too late. So the people in your life, think about, just put yourself in their shoes. If out of a clear blue sky, suddenly somebody wrote you who was in your class or who you coached in Little League, and many, many years later, and you got a card from them saying that, wow, you really made a difference for me. Think about how you'd feel. And so why not give that gift to others? That's one of the most powerful, personal, important kindness steps you can take in your life. And it's, it may be no more than a few sentences. That's one of the great things I love about social media is that I was a coach in my first career, and I've got some of the most heartfelt, moving, touching reach outs from people that I coached when they were little kids. I think they even remember my name. And they wrote these things that had me in tears. But of course, I cried openings of supermarkets. So that's, that's fun.
Well, yeah, you say that, Brian, but same exact thing. Somebody will find me on Facebook, and I heard from 30 years, and they send me a note, and they'll say they still remember something I taught. I said, I don't even remember it. Boy, does that make a difference. So just a recommendation to anybody watching or listening, if somebody's made a difference in your life, a coach, could be a teacher, could be, it doesn't matter who it is, it's in them know. What a powerful way to exhibit kindness.
It absolutely is. And it sets off a chain reaction, because what you focus on is what you create. And when somebody acknowledges you for something you might have forgotten that you did, suddenly you refocus on it and you want to do more of it again. And so it starts to create its own life to it. So it's a living process, and it's something so simple to do that we rush by. And see, that's one of the opportunities in this time. If everyone who watches your show reached out to one person who made a difference in their life, who they never told them, they never shared that story, they never realized what they had done, then wow, we've started a movement of appreciation. And when you're in the feelings of gratitude and kindness, you're at your best. There's a book that was called Power versus Force that measured the frequency of emotion, and the highest frequency of all emotion, gratitude. That when you're in gratitude, there is no room for sadness. It gets pushed aside, because anger, the negative emotions have a very low frequency. So the higher you are, the more you overpower those feelings, the more you move forward in your life. So it's a really simple but incredibly life-changing action you can take to write those letters, to make that phone call, to just reach out to somebody who's made a difference, because they may not even know they did it. And that really lifts them up.
All right, let me jump in here a little bit. Just remind our listeners that listen to the Blaine's World show, heard here on WPVM 103.7 out of Asheville every Wednesday morning from 9 to 10. We're also on Facebook Live, so we hope you join us whenever you want to. And I should mention that we're speaking today with my friend Brian Biro. Brian Biro is the author of the I have it now, you can see the ROI of Kindness. And Brian, if you're willing, I'm going to be participating in a little experiment here. The first half of the show is been on the split screen, sort of a CNN, type thing. I'm going to see the second half of the show, and I'd be curious your reaction and viewers' reactions. I'm now going to split the screen so that when you're talking, you'll be on the screen. When I'm talking, I'll be on the screen. It's just something I've never done before, but I'm just curious what people think, whether they like the split screen or the full screen. So we're now going to go to a full screen, and I now see Brian. And Brian, you see me in a full screen?
No, I still see you the same way, but that could be my set.
Okay, but I'd like to talk a little bit then more about the ROI Kindness. Especially, Brian, you mentioned one thing, you call it CKO, which I thought was a great title. And the thing I get from this too, we can all be a CKO. Is that correct? You don't have to be a major corporation. You can be, I guess, your own CKO. And you talk about, I love it, the 7 habits of a highly effective CKO. Tell me one of them.
That's really my favorite part of writing this book, is because it's one thing to talk about being kind, but that's pretty general. How can you, what are the real elements that, as the Chief Kindness Officer, CKO, that you can bring in your life, both at home and at work? And one that is probably surprising, but I also think is more necessary, more important than it's ever been, is the power of humility, being humble. Now, first thing I need to make sure people understand, being humble doesn't mean you can't have confidence. You can have tremendous confidence and be incredibly humble. 2 of my great heroes were 2 of the most humble people I know. One was the man who wrote my first book, John Wooden, the greatest men's college basketball coach of all time. He was very humble, but he was very confident. The other is Blaine Greenfield, the star of Blaine's World, who is a confident person, but very humble. Because being humble doesn't mean you think less of yourself. It means you think of yourself less. But the reason why humility is so crucial to living a great life, to delivering kindness, is that only those who are humble are lifelong learners. Because only those who are humble are always looking around at whether things are going great or not great. What can I learn? How can I get better? How can I use this to serve people more? So when you're someone who is always feeling like you have to be right, instead of wanting to learn from challenges where you made a poor choice, you're going to be less kind, because you're going to be an ego versus we-go person. So one of the 7 habits of a highly effective Chief Kindness Officer is to really transform that and become that humble person who is always looking to learn, always looking to grow, always looking for the lesson or the message or the opportunity, so that you can consistently feel like, hey, I'm happy with who I am today, but I want to get better tomorrow. That is a wonderful attribute, as opposed to I have to be the best at everything I do every day.
Well, it's funny, because that reminds me of one of my favorite quotes. One of my favorite people was a woman by the name of Shirley Chisholm. And
yes,
Chisholm was actually the first woman to ever run for president, first African-American to ever run for president. And she has a quote, I have it right on my wall somewhere. I'm looking around my office here. And she said, service is the rent we pay for living on earth, And that so ties into, I never thought about it until you mentioned it, that so ties into what you talk about humility, in terms of not serving yourself. And so it's so funny, it ties into kindness also, that anything you can do, Zig Ziglar also talked about it, he said, you get anything you want in life, so long as you help enough other people get what they want.
Absolutely.
And I never really equated it to humility and kindness, but they're all kind of related.
They really are. I mean, I think another one of those 7 habits that is probably as important as any, in fact, it's the foundation of kindness, is to be fully present. And what that means is when you're fully present with another person, 100% of your mind, body, and spirit is with that person where they are now. I'll say that again because it's so important. When you're fully present, 100% of your mind, body, and spirit is with the person you're with, where they are now. Now, all of your listeners, how many have ever been with somebody where you know their body's present, but the rest of them is definitely in another county? Yeah, I mean, we all have been there. And what it says to a person when you're fully present, it says to them the one thing we must communicate if we're going to build a relationship, if we're going to lift them up. When you're fully present, you say to that person beyond words, through your presence, you are important. You matter. You count. And whenever you're not present, you speak louder. And in this world we're in right now, we need that focus on presence, because the average American father today spends an average of 9.5 to 10.5 hours per day on a cellular digital device, and less than 8 minutes a day in actual interaction with his children. When you're fully present, that's the only way that you truly let people know that they matter.
Well, let me use that example, Brian, to have you tell one of my favorite stories, if you would. And you tell the story of your daughters when you would be on the road. And then I just love the story. You know which one I'm talking about, that
yeah.
On the phone and whatnot,
yeah.
What your daughter said to you. I just love it.
Yeah, I mean, my daughters are my greatest teachers. And when they were 8 and 3, my speaking business had taken off, and we actually moved from the big city of Seattle, Washington, to a little tiny town in Montana called Hamilton, Montana. And we moved that I would be a fully present dad. So I was on the road 15, 17 days a month, but when I'd be home, I was bringing my office into the home, and I would be there. I would get them ready for school. I'd make them breakfast. I'd be there to pick them up after school, to do their help them with their homework, to take them to dance practice, have dinners together, and tuck them in at night. I was going to be that guy that I wanted to be. That was my most important priority. But Blaine, have you ever noticed sometimes we know what to do, but we don't do what we know? And in those days, it's kind of hard to imagine it, but we weren't really yet on computers that much. We weren't doing email. It was all voice. It was all phone. And so I was consulting all over on all these different time zones. I'd get up at 4:30 in the morning in my office before 5. And next thing I know, I missed taking them to school. Carol and my wife had done it. I'd be on some conference call when school was over, and I wouldn't be there to pick them up or help them with the homework, but I was going to be present. And the big one was I was going to tuck them in at night, tell them a story, hug them, let them know that they're the most important people in the world. And that was my intent. But every night as I went to go to tuck them in, I made a mistake, and I passed by my office, and the door was open. And what I saw on my desk was a telephone. And, you know, this is hard for a lot of people to know. The phone plugged into the wall. It was really weird. All right. It wasn't one that you carried around with you. And I knew that in the short time that I had run down to get a bite to eat, I would have at least 5, maybe 10 voicemails. So I got this thought. While they're brushing their teeth and putting their jammies on, I'll just knock off a few of these voicemails so I don't have so many in the morning. Well, you know what happened. An hour later, I put the phone. And I remember, Blaine, so many nights going into their bedroom. They've been asleep for an hour. The lights are out. I'd go and I'd give them each of them a kiss that they didn't know they got. And as I walked out the door, it felt like somebody just punched me in the gut. And I'd say, in my mind, I'd say, tomorrow I will get this right. Tomorrow I'll be the dad. Tomorrow I'll be present. But the next night that phone was there, and this turned into days that ran into weeks. And then one night, I was reaching for my phone as they were supposed to be brushing their teeth. And all I can tell you, Blaine, is I felt them behind me. I couldn't see them. I didn't hear them, but I felt a light behind me. And I turned around and I looked, and there they were. And when they saw me, that was like their signal. They ran to me. And Jenna was 3 at the time, so she immediately crawled up on my chair as if she were with me right now and kind of nosed my hand up like a golden retriever wanting to get petted. Kelsey came up. She was like 8 at the time and like 4 feet tall by 6 pounds, and came up and put her arms around me. And they looked at me, and I looked at them. I said, "Girls, what are you doing? This is so cool." And they looked at me and they said, "Daddy, we just want to ask you something before we go to sleep." And I go, "Well, what is it, girls?" And they grabbed my heart, Blaine, and they shook it. And they changed my life. And they said, "Daddy, we just want to know, do you love your phone more than you love us?" I felt the blade go in. You know, Emerson said, "What you do scream so loudly, I can't hear a word you're saying." And I was living my life as if my phone was more important than my daughter's. Well, I will tell you, I tucked him in that night. And I never missed another night when I was home. Next morning, I made him breakfast. I got him ready for school. I never missed another morning when I was home, which Carol, my wife, is very happy about because she's not a morning girl. From that day on, I changed my whole focus. I started my calendar with them. In other words, I blocked out all the dance recital dates, all the big events at school. That was number one. I would never do an event if it conflicted with those special days in their lives. And Blaine, I thought I was doing it for them. You know that every dimension of our life grows with the decision to be more fully present. You don't get less done in your life when you're present. You get more done. None of my books got written until they woke me up and shook my heart and gave me a golden life that's never changed, which is to be fully present with each person at every chance I get. And so it's the ultimate. Let me just say, there is because you can't communicate kindness when they know they're not that important.
And to give you the compliment, Brian, that you also do this even in our breakfast club. You know, one of the things I always admire about you, half time, if not 3/4 of the time, you don't bring your phone in, you know, and you'll even tell us you don't have to have the phone. And it's really cool because you're saying that the meeting with the guys is the most important thing as opposed to your calls. You know, so
thank you. And that's exactly the way I want to feel about it because, you know, it's not that technology is bad. It's just we have to understand when and how to use it so that it doesn't take away from human connection. When it enhances human connection, that's fantastic. Pick up that phone and call that person you haven't told. I mean, you just gave me a great gift. I didn't realize that had made a difference. That,
oh yeah, big difference.
And so I'm grateful for that. And but I think that we have to control technology, not let technology control us.
Well, it's so funny you say that because one of the things I in marketing, I'll say that marketing is high touch, not high tech. You know, so many companies, so many people have high tech systems and they think you can reach everybody high tech. Garbage. Pick up that call, write the note. I'm at a disadvantage in that I have the worst handwriting, as you may have seen. So I have to type it, but I'll at least sign my name or something. But it's just that personal touch, being in touch with your daughters, hugging them, kissing them, saying goodnight to them, as opposed to patting them an hour later.
You know, I was talking to the CEO the other day of a large company called Southwestern. And, you know, there's something that you can do that I'm kind of shocked by this, is that they were, because of what's going on with the pandemic, they're very virtual right now. Their people are working from home. So they were having a big, almost town hall company meeting. Typically, those meetings are, you know, knocking things off the agenda. Number one, number two, they're all business. And he was looking on the screen like we're looking at right now, and he saw people just kind of looking at their phones and looking down and doing stuff. And he stopped the meeting. And he said, "How are you guys doing?" Really what he did. And the whole meeting changed. And people suddenly felt cared about. Suddenly felt like connecting and sharing and talking. And he was stunned that it woke him up to the fact that that's what we can even put that presence into when we send an email or a text. What do we usually do? We just put it out there with you know, the information. But just a few things, like I start every one of my emails and texts with "joy to you." And it's because I want them first to feel a sense of energy and joy. I want to have it be human before it gets to the stuff. And every now and then I'll write, you know, because you also want to enter people's world. So I'll send my daughters texts. And they laugh at me because my texts have punctuation. And they have, you know, they're full sentences. But most of the time when I text them, it's not about stuff. It's, I just want you to know how much I love you. And I want to, I talk about the moments when they taught me things, or I talk about how much I believe in them. And as I'm doing it, filled up with those feelings, and it makes me feel good. And again, they probably think, "No, my dad's weird. He sends me these long-winded texts." But I know that they get it, and it makes a different kind of connection. And right now, we got to connect.
Well, you know, even on connection, again, you do it so often, and I'll tell you, I do appreciate it, that sometimes you go back and forth to text with our guy, the Breakfast Club, we call it. We call it, for the benefit of folks who don't know, we call it the Romeo Club. Sorry, I don't have my hat with me, but the Romeo is, of course, the really old men eating out. And what's so cool is in between, and you're kind of the leader of this, Brian, we'll go back, text back and forth. And rather than just a very formal thing, 1 minute, 9 o'clock, blah, 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 confirm it, you always put like a joke or a funny statement. And then Marvin will try to top it, and Tom will try to top it, and I'll try to top it. But hey, it puts a smile on my face, and what's so funny about it, it puts a smile on my face when I write something, I think it's funny, and I feel good about it. And then when somebody else does, puts another, it's just such a cool thing to do, to go beyond just a formal, run meet Wednesday at 9 o'clock.
It really is. And what it does is it's just an actual application of being present. It takes a little bit more focus, a little more energy, and that minute, when you do that, you see your friends' faces, and you see the smile that's coming. You anticipate it, and so you're fully present as opposed to just kind of separating out. It's the power of adding a dimension of kind of story to things, the fun of a story. And the research shows that stories connect 22 times more than just information. In other words, when we learn a message or a moral or an act or an idea from a story, it sticks with us 22 times more than just the information. So it's also good communication, and it works.
Brian, also one of the things that I think comes through in both your writing, your speaking, I've had the pleasure of hearing you speak several times, just meeting you, is you're probably, I think, the most enthusiastic guy I've ever met in my life. And you're also the most energetic guy I've ever met in my life. And I don't know that I've seen you down too many times, How do you maintain that level of energy?
Well, the first key, Blaine, and thank you for that. The first key is to understand that your energy is your choice. Many people think that energy is kind of like the pandemic. It's up to it's out there. That that it's like the weather. Hope the weather's good for the family picnic. Have enough energy to make it through this week. But your energy is a choice. It's a choice of the way that you do two things primarily. Number one, the way you move. Your energy is directly connected to the way that you move. So anytime you want to elevate your energy, sit up taller, put a smile on your face. Even if you feel like it's a goofy thing to do, instantly you'll feel yourself rise. If your energy's on a 10-point scale with 1 comatose and 10 a child on Christmas morning, just sitting up and smiling immediately lifts you at least a point. But the most powerful source of energy, that again is a choice, is purpose. Is that when you're full of purpose, you're full of energy. You ever notice when you get to do things you love to do, it doesn't matter how much sleep you had, it doesn't matter how you've been feeling. When you get to do what you love to do, you're 5 years old, right? But when you lose sight of your purpose, it's like somebody puts a big old pin in it, right? And so we have a choice to focus on purpose and to elevate our movement. Those are conscious choices that will become habitual. And so to me, I always remember this foundational belief that drives me and keeps me focused on elevating my energy, and that is, to anyone I touch, my energy is my example. Like, people won't remember that much of what we said today, but hopefully they'll remember our energy. They'll remember, that we felt like we still had choices right now. They won't remember the specific words. And that's the way it always is. Our energy is our example. So focus on your movement. Focus on, elevate your movement 5%, and you'll be 5% more energetic.
I think the energy example is, again, using you as an example, that if you ever have the pleasure of seeing Brian in person, which I'll encourage everybody to try to at some point in time in their life, if they remember one thing, as you said, they'll remember this energetic guy, and we'll talk about it in terms of the fact, and I remember at least, boy, you're moving on that stage. And you track you went to me in a 3-hour seminar, you did how many steps, do you recall?
Yeah, it was 18,000 steps.
And most people, they get 18,000 steps in 2 days of their life.
Well, yeah, 3 hours, I got to keep them awake, so I'm like a tennis match, I'm moving back and forth.
But it's fun though, but I remember that, I see you, and tried to do the same thing too when I taught. I learned it from a teacher, Grace Donnelly, and she once said that, hey, if you're in my class, nobody's ever going to fall asleep, you know? And I think that's in your presentation. I'll bet you nickel, not too many people ever fall asleep in one of your presentations.
I hope not, you know, and the fun part is that energy is contagious. Positive energy is contagious, negative energy is contagious. And so I'm not thinking about moving, but I'm so into my purpose, which is just when I'm speaking, I want everyone to believe in themselves more by the time we finish. I want them to know that they are their CEOs of their own life. So that is coming through, and it's not conscious movement, it's just movement in alignment with that purpose. And I know that that is communicating and in a positive contagiousness that get other people to start to elevate their energy. It's a natural process. So yeah, right now we need a lot of energy because a lot of people are scared and feeling and focusing on what we don't want. And remember that what you focus on is what you create. Not what you get, what you create. So focus on energy. Focus on the possibility in the midst of adversity. Focus on being flexible, doing the next best thing. Focus on kindness. Focus on getting and delivering kindness and using this time where we're closed down a little bit to open up a little bit and share your love with the people that matter to you in your life.
The best example of what you're saying was talking about Wayne Dyer. And Wayne Dyer, whenever he would sneeze, you know, once in a blue moon, people would say, you know, are you coming down with a cold? And just what you said word for word, he says, no, I'm not coming down with a cold. I don't even want to talk about this, you know, because people, and I won't mention any names, but some people, you sneeze, and they want to give you a handkerchief, they want to give you medicine, you know, they want to, what's the matter? He said, his line was great, Brian. He said, I don't do colds. You know, but isn't that a great way of looking at it? And you're another guy. First time ever, remember maybe a couple months ago, I saw you had a cold, you know. Remember you had something you came down with.
Right.
What is this? I had never seen you, you know, with a cold. And, you know, so you do the same kind of thing. You don't focus on it.
That's really, you know, I learned this when I was a swimming teacher because I'd have these 2 and 3-year-old children, you know, who are thinking about being scared and having to put their face in the water. And I would point to something and just divert their attention to focus on something else. And the next thing I know, they're swimming because they weren't focusing on what they don't want. They were focusing on what they do want. And we are just big kids. The same thing is true. You know, I don't want to focus. I want to work on controlling my focus to the things that I want to focus on. You know, and the more you do that, the more you create more of it in your life. So that again is one of the key choices, is to focus on what you want or what you don't want. How many people spend more of their time worrying about what will go wrong than creating what will go right? And that's just a choice of focus. And the more you do it, the more you build a reserve of that positive energy and creativity, so that when things come at you like this pandemic, you immediately go, wow, this could be scary. What am I going to do? What can I change? What can I learn? How can I develop something that I never developed before? What's the opportunity in this?
And in our remaining time, Brian, the problem is we have another 3 hours of stuff I want to talk to you about. But I just want to share maybe 1 or 2 kindness stories involving Brian Byro, and just something I've always appreciated. But the one you'll remember, and then you'll tell a second story as a result of it. But it was my first Christmas in Asheville area, and we didn't know anybody. And you said, "Come on over. We're having a Christmas party," you know. And I hadn't been to lots of Christmas parties, but you had to come to a Christmas party. And not only was it a Christmas party, but the 2 things you'll always remember is that we were greeted by Santa Claus, you know, which is pretty cool. And also we got a gift. You know, my God, you know, we hardly knew you. You know, we met you a couple of times, and Santa gave us a gift. And we know who Santa was, I think. It was somebody we know. But the spin of that story I have to have you tell is a story about somebody else who got a gift that Christmas, a friend's mother.
Yes.
And tell that story. I just love it.
Yeah, that was really neat. We did this Christmas party for a lot of years. We did it this year again. And one of those events might even have been that one. A good friend of ours brought her 89-year-old mother. who was from Nebraska. And the way we work it is that we create a gift package. My wife is so amazing all year long. She's looking for stuff, and we have a package for each kind of family or group as they come up, and they sit on Santa's lap. Well, this 89-year-old woman and her daughter came up, and she sat on Santa's lap, and I will never forget her eyes were like that 5-year-old kid sitting on Santa's lap for the first time. And she told her daughter that was one of the highlights of her life, that she, in her 89 years, she had never sat on Santa's lap. And wow, that was worth doing that party for 25 years to have that particular moment, that something seemingly so silly and little as that could actually touch somebody's heart and bring them some joy.
And it brought us joy, Cynthia and I, because we were new to the area, we didn't know anybody, and it was just really cool, that this guy brings all these people together, from different areas. So I'll say it again, but thank you for that invitation. It meant a lot to us. Well,
I will say this too, you give me the perfect clue, is that if I think of the people that in my life that I've had amplify kindness, it's Blaine. It's you. You meet someone, you listen to them, you find out what they're interested in, and the next thing they know is they're getting information. You're sending them stories, you're sending them articles. You're always looking to serve. Mother Teresa said, service is love in action. And you express that caring about other people by truly being present with them enough to listen, to be interested. And it's marvelous. That week that you came to that Christmas party, you had just been to Asheville. That was the last time you didn't know anyone in Asheville. Now you know everyone in Asheville. And the reason people are drawn to you is because of that humble kindness, because you don't care about getting anything back. It's amazing what's accomplished when no one cares who gets the credit. Credit is something you give, responsibility is something you take. And you demonstrate kindness most of all in a way by action and by reaching out and trying to help people receive things that are of value and interest to them. And that's really something that I've never seen anybody do it to the degree that you do.
Well, thank you for saying that, Brian. And we have all of 2 minutes left to talk about Ed Barrow. If you want to get in touch with you, find out about some of the virtual products you're doing. Can you give me kind of the Reader's Digest version of some of the things you're doing?
Absolutely. I realized that these virtual programs have impact. That's why I've been trying to do them for years, because I love live events. But I do my Breakthrough Leadership program, which has been the foundation of what I've done as a speaker. So it's virtual and it's powerful, it's moving, it's fun, it's engaging, and the technology actually allows for interaction. I do the ROI of Kindness webinar, which I just really want to bring more kindness into our world, into our businesses, into our families, into our communities. So it's an hour and a half type of program. I do a story workshop, because stories are the power of connecting people. And a lot of people don't think they're very good storytellers. Well, this is a workshop about storytelling and story listening, and it's a lot of fun and very interactive. And finally, I have my book.
Okay, which is the RO of Kindness. So folks want to get information about the book, these programs, best bet is to what, Brian?
Just go to my website, brianbiro.com. It's BRIANBIRO. So brianbiro.com. It's got all those programs, and it's also got just lots of fun stuff.
I'd like to thank you, Brian, for being my guest on the Blaine's World Show today. Thanks everybody else for watching virtually, and if you want to drop me a note or let me know whether you think it's better full screen or where Brian and I were split. We also hope to see you next week, same time, same place, Wednesday at 9 a.m. on WPVM. And thanks for listening. And Brian, as always, pleasure. And we hope to see you and speak to you sometime near future. And if I can stop the recording, we'll be in good shape.
Thank you so much. Be well, everybody.
Speak to you. Okay. And I think we're going to stop the recording here.